Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. In this video, we will present about our Occupational Safety and Health JSA Hirarc assignment. Our topic is to identify the work related to lab experiment, and this is the list of our group members. Next is the definition of JSA. Job Safety Analysis, JSA, is a systematic plan that divides each task into key training sequences, identifies safety elements of each task step, and coaches the employee on how to avoid potential safety hazards. Table 1. Task or work activity. We identified 5 activities in this assignment. The first one is pouring the chemical waste and solution into the sink. This activity is chemical hazard as the corrosive solution that was poured will go through the sink. The risk is it can damage the plumbing and cause environmental contamination. The existing risk control for this activity is to dispose the chemical waste and solution into the appropriate waste container. And the recommendation control measure is by labeling the waste container and placing the waste container at a visible place. Next task is running, horseplay and practical jokes in the laboratory. This activity is a safety hazard because we ignore the laboratory safety rules and advice from the person in charge. The risk is the person will bump into someone or machine which will cause accident. Collision with the table can cause the chemical solution to spill out from the apparatus or accidentally switching the chemical which it might cause a fire or explosion. The existing risk control for this activity is to understand and apply the guidelines of laboratory safety rules in the laboratory. And the recommended countermeasure is to stick the warning signboard on the wall in the laboratory. Number 3. Handling the apparatus carelessly. It is a physical hazard as it can cause the lab apparatus to break or damage. The risk is it can harm the individual by causing minor injuries such as small wounds. The existing risk control is by ensuring that equipment is functioning safely. Routine maintenance should be done to laboratory equipment. And the recommended control measure is reminding the user about the rules every time starting the experiment. Task number 4 is handling water bath machine. It is considered a physical hazard by removing items from water bath with bare hands and not checking water level in the water bath properly. The risks are hot water can splash onto your body and the machine can also light on fire if the water bath is left to overheat or boil dry. Existing risk control for this hazard is to use gloves or wooden test tube clamp to hold the apparatus in the water bath and check water level and add water if necessary to prevent drying out of water bath. Recommended countermeasure is changing the outer layer of water bath with heat insulating material to prevent burning injuries or add a new feature for water baths such as alarm when water levels are low. And lastly, consuming the food and beverages in the lab. The hazards are cross-contamination of food or drink with chemical exposure, which is a chemical hazard, and the objects from the equipment might enter the food or drink, which is a physical hazard. The risk is we can get a foodborne illness from eating food that are contaminated with chemicals used in the lab, and also the risk for ingestion of hazardous that lead to choke, damage to the teeth. Existing risk control for this hazard is to wash hands thoroughly before and after using the utensils in order to prevent food contamination. And food and beverages are not allowed to bring into the lab as stated in the laboratory safety and regulations. And the recommended countermeasure is to provide special shelves for food and drinks outside the laboratory for students to put their foods.
For the likelihood for hazard or risk to occur in an activity can be divided into 5, which are highly likely, very likely, likely, less likely, and unlikely. An example of an activity with the likelihood of highly likely is removing items from water bath with bare hands, which can cause hot water to splash onto body. This means that the activity is very highly likely to harm people. That is why it has a rating of 5. Next, the hazards or risks which are very likely to occur is first, cause the lab apparatus to break or damage that can harm the individual, and also cross-contamination of food or drink with chemical exposure, which has the rating of 4. Thirdly, hazard or risk which are likely to occur is the corrosive solution will go through the sink, which can damage the plumbing and also cause environmental contamination. It has a rating of 3. Fourth, the hazards or risks which are less likely to occur are checking the water level, which can make water bath machine light on fire if you have to overheat or boil dry. The objects from the equipment may enter the food or drinks, which can result in the damage of teeth or choking. And also ignoring the laboratory safety rules and advice from the person in charge, which the person will bump into someone or a machine that may cause an accident. All the three hazards and risks have ratings of 2. Lastly, the hazard or risk which is unlikely to occur is ignoring the laboratory safety rules and advice from the person in charge, which may cause collision with the table or cause the chemical to spill out from the apparatus or switching the chemical. It has a rating of 1, meaning that the probability of the hazard or risk to occur is very low. Like the second table just now, the table of severity for hazards and risks also have 5 categories, which are catastrophic, fatal, serious, minor, and negligible. The first hazard, which is not checking water level, which can make water bath machine light on fire if left to overheat or boil dry. The severity of the hazard is catastrophic, meaning if it occurs, then serious injuries or even death can happen. That is why it has a rating of 5. For the 2 hazard and risk, which are the corrosive solution will go through the sink, which can damage the plumbing and cause environmental contamination, and the objects from the equipment might enter the food or drinks, which can result in the damage of teeth or choking, have the severity of being fatal. These 2 hazards and risks have the severity of 4, which is less serious than the first severity, which is catastrophic. With the severity being serious, example of hazard and risk is cross-contamination of food or drink with chemical exposure that lead to foodborne illness. It might not cause death, but it is still a serious hazard. It has a rating of 3. Minor severity. The example of hazards and risk are removing items from water bath with bare hands, which can cause hot water to splash onto body. And secondly, ignoring the laboratory safety rules and advice from the person in charge. So from these 2 examples, minor accident can occur, but it will not lead to serious injury of the person, which has the rating of 2. Lastly, the example of hazards and risks which have negligible severity, meaning that the hazard or risk will not cause much harm or injury to the person, is first, cause the apparatus to break or damage that can harm the individual by causing minor injuries. And next, ignoring the laboratory safety rules and advice from the person in charge, which may cause collision with the table and can cause the chemical to spill out from the apparatus or switching the chemical, which has severity of 1. And that is all from me. Thank you.
Next is table 4, risk matrix. For likelihood, we have unlikely, less likely, likely, very likely, and high likely, which ranked by number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It is shown that the bigger the number is, the frequent for the accident to happen. For severity, we have catastrophic, fatal, serious, minor, and negligible, which is ranked by number 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. It is shown that the bigger the number is, the bigger the damage of the accident. When the risk level is high, the risk value is from 15 to 25 and the color is red. And when the risk level is medium, the risk value is from 5 to 12 and the color is yellow. Last but not least, when the risk level is low, the risk value is from 1 to 4 and the color is green. The colors show that the red is the most dangerous, followed by yellow, and last green as the least dangerous. I will describe the meaning of this color in the next slide. We continue with table 5, risk value. It is characterized by the need for immediate action to control the hazard outlined in the hierarchy of control. The action taken must be recorded on the risk assessment form with a date for completion. For the yellow color, a medium risk level requires a plan of action to control the hazard and where needed an application of temporary measures. The risk assessment form should contain a record of the actions taken, including a date of completion. For the green color, a risk indicated at a low level can be considered acceptable and no further reduction may be required. However, control measures should be implemented and recorded if the risk can be quickly and effectively resolved.
For Table 6, Job or Task List, Hirarc form. In Hirarc form, there are hazard identification, risk analysis, and risk control. In hazard identification, there are work activity, hazard, and effect. Whereas in risk analysis, there are existing risk control, likelihood, severity, and risk value that follows according to risk metrics. And lastly, in risk control, there are recommended countermeasures and person in charge. For activity 1, pouring the chemical waste and solution into the sink, where the hazard, the corrosive solution will go through the sink and might affect the damage of plumbing that may cause environmental contamination. The existing risk control for this two activity is disposing the chemical waste and solution into the appropriate waste container. The likelihood of is 3 and the severity is 4, hence the risk value is 12, which is medium risk level. By labeling the waste container and placing the container at a visible place may control the hazard. The person in charge of the risk control is Shurahia binti Said Masuk and completed on 5th November 2023. For activity 2, which is running, horseplay, and practical jokes in the laboratory, where the hazard is ignoring the laboratory safety rules and advice from the lab assistant. There are two effects that may occur from this activity, which are bump into someone or machine, which can cause accident, and the second one is collision with table that lead to chemical spillage or switching the chemical. The existing risk control for this activity is understanding and apply the guidelines of laboratory safety rules in the lab. The likelihood of risk for bump into someone or machine is 2 and the severity is also 2, hence the risk value is 4. Whereas the likelihood of risk for collision with table that lead to chemical spillage is 1 and the severity is also 1. Hence the risk value is 1 and so both effects are low risk level. By sticking the warning signboard in the laboratory to remind the student to be extra careful is the recommended countermeasure. The person in charge for this risk control is Nuriza Nadira binti Khairuddin and completed on 6 November 2023. For activity 3, the work activity is handling the apparatus carelessly that can cause the lab apparatus to break or damage. The effect of this activity is can harm the individual by causing minor injuries such as small ones. The existing risk control is ensure the equipment is functioning, safe to use, and routine maintenance. The likelihood of risk is 4 and the severity is 1, hence the risk value is 4, which is low risk level. By reminding the user about the rules every time starting the experiment may control the hazard. This risk control is completed by Fasiha binti Luk Hakim on 9 November 2023. For activity 4, handling water bath machine may be hazardous if removing items from water bath with bare hands and not checking water level. By removing items with bare hands, hot water can splash onto body and machine can light on fire if the water bath is left to overheat or boil dry because of the shaken water level. The existing risk control for removing items with bare hand is use glove or wooden test tube clamp, where the likelihood is 5 and the severity is 2, so the risk value is 10, which is medium risk level. The recommended countermeasure is changing the outer layer of water bath with heat insulating material to prevent burning injuries. The other existing risk control is check water level and add water if necessary to prevent drying out of water bath. The likelihood of this risk is 2 and the severity is 5, hence the risk value is 10, which is medium risk level. This risk control is completed by Nur Damia Idina binti Muhammad Zuhaidi on 12 November 2023 for the last activity, which is consuming the food and beverages in the laboratory. This activity may lead to hazards, which are cross-contamination of food or drink with chemical exposure. The object from the equipment might enter the food or drink. The effect of cross-contamination is get a foodborne illness. So, as wash your hand thoroughly before and after using the apparatus to prevent food contamination is one of existing risk control. The likelihood of this risk is 4 and the severity is 2, hence the risk value is 8, which is medium risk level. The risk for ingestion of hazardous that lead to choke, damage to teeth, as the risk control for this risk is by not allowing to bring food or beverages into the lab The likelihood of this risk is 2 and the severity is 4, hence the risk value is 8, which is medium risk level. The recommended control measure is providing special shelf for food and drinks outside the lab. The person in charge is Mr. Salomon Slaiban and completed on 8 November 2023.
Next is table 7, which is categorized and rank the tasks from the risky to the less risky. The first task is pouring the chemical waste and solution into the sink. The risk value of this task is 12 and known as medium risky for the lab experiment. The second task is handling water bath. Here, as stated in the table, both hazards show the same result of risk value, which is 10. This task is also known as medium risky. Next is task 3. Task 3 is about consuming the food and beverage in the laboratory. In this task also show the same result of risk value for both hazard, which its value is 8 and also known as medium risky. Then, task 4 is about handling the apparatus carelessly. This task is known as low risky task because the risk value is 4. And the last task is running horseplay and practical jobs in the laboratory. Give 2 results of risk value which are 4 and 1, but both are low risky for this task. So, in this part, we can conclude that among the 5 tasks that has been mentioned, the task 1, which is pouring the chemical waste and solution into the sink, is the most concern, which everyone need to be more careful and give more attention, because the risk value is higher, which rank in medium risk level. However, the task 5, which is running horseplay and practical jobs in laboratory, is the less concern because the risk value is only 1, which rank in low risk level. The last table is SOP. SOP stands for Self-Operating Procedure. SOP is known as a set of written instructions that describe the step-by-step process that must be taken to properly perform a routine activity. We need to follow the SOP so that the error can be reduced, increase the efficiency of the work, and creating the safe work environment. Here, I will explain the SOP needed for every task. The SOP for task 1, which is pouring the chemical waste and solution into the sink, the staff must label all the container and place at the visible area so that the corrosive solution will not go through the sink, which can damage the plumbing and causing environmental contamination. Next, the SOP for task 2 here, the staff needs to stick the warning signboard on the wall, which it can remind students to always be careful on what they are doing. It is because to avoid an accident and incident, also to avoid the solution to spill out or switching the chemical. Then, the task 3 is handling the apparatus carelessly. The SOP for this task is the management should done a routine maintenance to the laboratory equipment at least once a month to ensure that the equipment is functionally safely and not dangerous to use so that the minor injuries could be avoided. The SOP for handling water bath machine is first, the student must not add too much water so that the water does not overflow when it reaches boiling point. And the student also must be aware of the water level. Preferably, distilled or deionized water should be filled instead of tap water, which has mineral that can build up over the time and make cleaning more difficult. The student should keep on ice and turn off the machine after usage. Lastly, the SOP for consuming the food and beverage in the laboratory is first, the student must wash their hands thoroughly by using the hand soap before and after the experiment. It is because by not washing hands, students may get foodborne illness from eating that food. Also, food and drink that has been brought to the laboratory is more likely to get chemical exposure, which can cause cross-contamination. Secondly, prohibition of bringing food and drink must be strict, so that the students follow the laboratory safety and regulation. It is because without our realizing, the item from the equipment might enter the food or drink, which can lead to choke or damage to teeth.
As a conclusion, based on the task of this job, the work activity that is most concerning is pouring the chemical waste and solution into the sink, followed by handling the water bath machine and consuming the food and beverage in the laboratory.
That's all from us. Thank you for watching.